Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Charles Royer. I'm director of the Institute of Politics, and I'd like to welcome you to the ARCO Forum for the opening ceremonies or celebration of our 25th anniversary here at the Institute of Politics. It's so good to welcome back to the Institute some 500 former fellows, student advisory committee members, staff, and just good friends of the Institute of Politics. Over the 25-year life of this place, each of you has contributed in some way to the shaping of it. And our entire staff is hopeful that you feel good about what you see here and what you hear while you're here during this reunion. Those of you who have spent some time around the Institute of Politics know that we often talk about why we are here, what our mission is. That's because our mission is our base. It's our purpose. It's almost our religion. And at age 25, it is still the right religion. In a letter to Harvard President Nathan Pusey on June 23, 1966, Robert Kennedy put it this way: "The purposes of the Institute will be to promote greater understanding and cooperation between the academic world and the world of practical politics and public affairs." That is not always an easy thing to do, as some practitioners and academics around here will tell you. But it is still the right thing to do, and it's what John F. Kennedy, the president, did and delighted in doing. The other part of our mission is much tougher these days, but even more right than it was 25 years ago. And that is the part that says we're here to inspire young people to enter the fray, to get into politics and public service. In 1936, young John Kennedy came to Harvard wide-eyed and open to new ideas. By the time he left in 1940, his interest in politics and public policy had matured, and his senior thesis became the well-respected book, Why England Slept. When the Institute of Politics was created in 1966 as a living memorial to JFK, and some of its creators are here with us in this audience today, it was hoped that the Institute could be a place where undergraduates could connect with the same kind of inspiration young John Kennedy must have experienced just up the street from where we sit today. I must say that one of the most gratifying rewards of serving as director of the Institute is first to see that interest in politics take shape in a student, and then to watch the careers of those who have served here on the Student Advisory Committee. During the last 25 years, the overwhelming majority of former SAC students have become involved in some sort of public service: elective office, grassroots lobbying, volunteer work, or some kind of government activity. Look at the roster of reunion attendees, which is in your packets this weekend. It should give you hope, because some of this country's best and brightest still are answering the call. The theme for this weekend's celebration is Strengthening America's Democracy, Politics and Purpose in the Post-Cold War Era. Because this is a large event requiring some lead time, we selected the topic, the theme, almost a year ago. The historic world events over the last 2 years suggested to us that this topic should indeed be a central focus of national political debate. And as if on cue, the headlines over the last 2 weeks read like a paid ad for this weekend. The Thomas hearings, the peace conference in the Middle East, the debate over term limits, the awakening, finally, of a campaign for president. Most Americans are talking about politics and about our democracy, where it excels and where it comes up short. In true Institute of Politics fashion, then, we have tried to seize the day and put together a program that will help to build that conversation, hopefully add something to the debate, maybe even suggest a few helpful ideas. And may I say that I am delighted that so many of you have come. It says to our staff and students that the IOP still matters to many, and that we have to work all the harder to keep it that way. Now, lots of people work very hard and very faithfully on behalf of the IOP. But few work harder or more faithfully than one of the key players in its creation, Senator Edward Kennedy. Since the very beginning, Senator Kennedy has provided both guidance and inspiration. Moreover, he has stayed active in our programming. The Senator attends every meeting of our Senate Senior Advisory Committee, except this morning's, I might add, Senator. But as you will hear, he was doing the Lord's work in Washington this morning. And he has provided always wisdom and advice and access to himself and to his office. He's always willing to meet with students, either here or in Washington, D.C. He remains our strongest supporter. And I would like to take this opportunity on behalf of the Institute and the Kennedy School of Government to express our most sincere thanks for all Senator Kennedy has done to inspire us and to keep us on course. Now, at the Institute, we're also proud of Senator Kennedy's distinguished record. Since 1987, he's been chairman of the Senate Committee on Labor and Human Resources, with major jurisdiction over the central domestic issues of our time. Throughout his 29 years in the Senate, he has been in the thick of the battle for a better America, and his is a powerful voice today. We saw his Senate leadership on display once again yesterday. Working with his colleagues and with the administration, he achieved the next great breakthrough on civil rights. Bipartisan organization at a tough time on a measure to provide real protection against race and sex discrimination in the workplace. It's an honor for me on this anniversary of the Institute of Politics to introduce a great senator for the people of Massachusetts and for the nation. Please help me welcome Senator Edward M. Kennedy.
I want to thank Charlie Royer for that generous introduction, and I also want to take the occasion of this anniversary to commend him for the strong and thoughtful leadership he is providing to the Institute of Politics that honors my brother's name. Charlie is Seattle's gift to Boston and the Institute. Our family is grateful to him, and I know that President Kennedy would be proud of him too. I return here again to join you in celebrating the first quarter century of the Institute. This is the part of the Kennedy School that most touches all of Harvard, from the newest college class in the yard to the most advanced PhD candidates, conversing with the visitors here, and I guess some of us may well be sources or even subjects for your dissertations. Above all, the Institute is a place where the university meets the real world. My brother would have been impressed with its achievements, especially the way it has opened new horizons of public service to succeeding generations of the young. It is a center of study, reflection, debate, and controversy. It is accessible, vital, and often exciting. And in many different ways, the Institute of Politics sets a high standard. And in doing so, it helps advance John Kennedy's ideal that politics is still the greatest and most honorable adventure. That ideal has many implications: a belief in a larger purpose, not just the pursuit of power for its own sake; a refusal to replace reason with fear, or rational debate with irrational stereotype; a continuity of commitment where leaders look to basic values and not just passing polls and 10-second sound bites; a resolve to attempt great and enduring things, and a recognition that they cannot be built by the dark politics of suspicion, division, and hate. Some of the anger of recent days, the powerful public reaction to the final phase of the Thomas hearings, reflects the pain of a new idea still being born. The idea of a society where sex discrimination is ended and sexual harassment is unacceptable. The idea of an America where the majority who are women are truly and finally equal citizens. We are told that in other nations, people watching the Thomas hearings could not understand what the fuss was all about. By that measure, at least, America is different, and I believe better. Whatever any of us may feel about the outcome of the confirmation vote, and as you know, I have strong feelings, it is a mark of our progress that here in this nation, the charges raised by Anita Hill had to be taken seriously. With women, as with minorities, we are seeking to end the endless ages of injustice. So we should not be surprised that the passage is often stormy. Few worthwhile changes come quietly or on a gentle breeze. Yet it is also clear that when the storm comes, there are some who cannot resist a ride on the winds of fear, and others who even seek to fan them. The success of David Duke in Louisiana is the latest case in point. He has taken off the white sheet, but his appeal is fundamentally the same. It is racism in a business suit. And while the denunciations now pour forth from the White House, there is also a deeper, more disturbing truth here. David Duke is the logical, inevitable, and shameful extension of a politics that has increasingly appealed to our worst instincts. What is happening in Louisiana is a louder, unmodulated echo of what has happened already on the national stage. Those who have sown the seeds of racism are reaping the whirlwind of a nation increasingly divided against itself. We must not ever permit the principle of equal justice to be sacrificed on the altar of negative politics. Civil rights is the unfinished business of America. It is wrong, deeply wrong, for any administration, let alone the party of Abraham Lincoln, to rub salt in the nation's wounds on race. Yet for many months, the civil rights bill that Senator Danforth and I have been urging in the Senate was denounced as a quota bill, which it is not and never was. Fortunately for our bill and for the country, the administration has now relented. To his credit, President Bush has rejected the counsel of those who would keep the quota code word in their arsenal of racial resentment. The agreement we reached last night is a well-earned victory for civil rights and a well-deserved defeat for those who would misuse race as a political weapon. For too often, in a similar trouble vein, crime and violence have been treated not as threats to all of us, of every background, but twisted into images of Willie Horton. And the authors of that strategy, who say they oppose crime, also join the gun lobby in opposing laws that would disarm the criminals and the deranged. I know something of the feelings of pain shared by legions of families across this land who have been victimized by the instant, tragic, terrible violence of gunshots. I fought for the Gun Control Act of 1968, and I intend to continue the fight for gun control in the 1990s. While all of this occurs, while our public dialogue is poisoned by aggression and code words, a vast recession rages on. A national economic decline which in any other time would have stirred a great national debate about jobs and taxes and the future of the economy. Instead, this recession has been allowed to lengthen and deepen, while Massachusetts has borne the brunt of Washington's failure to act. Twice Congress has tried to step in, and each time we have been met with the back of the presidential hand, 2 successive vetoes of a simple extension of unemployment benefits for working families. This administration's principal response so far to economic suffering has been to deny help to the people who are hurting most, and that is unfair and unacceptable. The poisoning of our politics also invites trivialization. In the absence of great issues, in the search for scapegoats, the resentment inevitably targets government itself. In the years I have been in public life, there has never been a period when the public dialogue was as arid or cynical as it is today. The problem is not an absence of ideas, but a failure to stand and fight. And to recapture the focus of national debate, we must get back to what matters. So let us have a real debate about a middle-class tax cut, a tax cut conscientiously designed to restart the economy and to redress the tax injustice of the 1980s. Let's have a tax cut, and let's pay for it by raising the top rate on those for whom the last decade was one long, comfortable windfall. I reject the idea that tax relief for the middle class should be paid for by savings from defense. The peace dividend is essential to urgent domestic initiatives like education, which have been shortchanged through the long years of Cold War. 2 days ago, in a Senate Labor Committee hearing which I chaired, a talented woman was honored as one of the Teachers of the Year. She testified eloquently about the false promise of education reform and the failure of our schools. The faces of society, she said, are reflected in her classroom every day. Dysfunctional families, poverty, drug and alcohol abuse, unemployment and illiteracy. We leave our teachers in the trenches alone, fighting disillusionment and despair. Education reform, she said, is failing all of us. One child at a time, one class at a time, one teacher at a time. It is time for this nation to stop refusing to provide the overdue resources that will make all the difference between continuing school decline and successful school reform. I have called for Head Start to be available for every 3-, 4-, and 5-year-old in America so that all children can begin school ready to learn. And I've also sought new ways to harness the miracles of high technology for the future of education so that America can have star schools and not just star wars. I have also worked hard for many years to achieve the next great step after Medicare, accessible and affordable health insurance for all Americans, not only for the almost 40 million Americans who are uninsured today, but for the vast majority whose coverage is too limited, too expensive, and constantly shrinking. We need to put national health insurance squarely before the nation, to state a plan, to insist that it be debated, to make it a decisive factor in the campaigns of 1992. And it's time to say to the President, we will not wait quietly until after the election to see what you have to propose. And it's time to say to the members of my own party, if we can't stand up on this issue, then what are we all about? And there is one other place where we must continue to stand, even when the ground is rocky and politically dangerous. We must not betray our country and our conscience by retreating in our day and generation from the hard, long, and historic work of achieving equal rights for all Americans. I gave my maiden speech in the United States Senate on the Civil Rights Act of 1964. That is a battle we must keep on waging, and a battle I will never walk away from. America will not be America if it is a society of unequal parts, oppressed and advantaged, powerful and exploited. At the most fundamental level, this country will fail if we do not succeed in bringing down the barriers of race and sex and prejudice. President Kennedy was ready to lose re-election if he had to for the cause of civil rights. Now let us reaffirm his belief that this nation, for all its hopes and boasts, will not be fully free until all its citizens are free. Each of us understands that in recent years, the climate of the times has grown harsher, the work harder. But when we have stood our ground, we have made substantial progress. We overcame those who call for constructive engagement with apartheid, and we imposed strong sanctions against South Africa. And in the past 2 years alone, we passed child care, a new minimum wage, new rights for millions of Americans with disabilities, and a landmark law to encourage the young of all ages to become involved in serving their own communities. And today we are at a new milestone on civil rights. The work goes on, and I take a measure of satisfaction in my role in the progress that we have made. If we neglect the challenges now, if we do not invest in our people, this great enterprise we call America will lose its confidence and vigor, and we will condemn this still young and vital democracy to a middle age of decline that no future generation will be able to roll back. If we are to revive and prosper, if we are to prepare for the 21st century, if we are to have schools that teach, and health care that heals, and business that competes, we must stop clawing at each other for petty advantage and start asking one another what sacrifices of narrow self-interest we must make and share in order to advance the greater public good. Many of our problems at home and in the larger world are also opportunities. In this state, they are especially urgent and also especially promising. Vital issues that have been among my own highest priorities in the Senate are coming to the fore. Jobs and schools and health are increasingly at the center of concern about the direction of our country and our role in a dramatically changing world. Most of all for Massachusetts, we must focus on the transition to the new high-tech economy in which our state is well positioned to excel and which holds such high potential for our future. Clearly, the temper and pressures of this period demand new energy from all of us and renewed resolve. But the New Deal, the new frontier, and the Great Society are not the end of American social history. Our day will come again, and we must keep the faith until it dawns. I say all this understanding that no one has a monopoly on truth or virtue. But individual faults and frailties are no excuse to give in, and no exemption from the common obligation to give of ourselves. I feel a special obligation to those who share my hopes for this state and nation, who in the past have given me their help and often even their hearts. My views on issues have made some people angry over the years, and frankly, I accept that as the price of fighting hard for my beliefs. And I'm painfully aware that the criticism directed at me in recent months involves far more than honest disagreement with my positions or the usual criticisms from the far right. It also involves the disappointment of friends and many others who rely on me to fight the good fight. To them I say I recognize my own shortcomings, the faults in the conduct of my private life. I realize that I alone am responsible for them, and I am the one who must confront them. Today, more than ever before, I believe that each of us, as individuals, must not only struggle to make a better world, but to make ourselves better too. And in this life, those endeavors are never finished. In my own life, I've been given many gifts. I have been blessed with extraordinary parents, and I've also been blessed with extraordinary brothers and sisters, and their children and my own. In the next generation sense of public service, I take considerable pride. Not least, unlike my brothers, I have been given length of years and time. And as I approach my 60th birthday, I am determined to give all that I have to advance the causes for which I have stood for almost a third of a century. Above all, whether the odds are in my favor or against me, I will continue to stand up in good times and in seasons of adversity for the people who sent me to the Senate in the first place nearly 30 years ago. So I say to my fellow citizens of Massachusetts, you have supported me in many of the great battles of our time, and you have sustained me in the worst moments. You have permitted me to take positions with which you have sometimes differed. I cannot promise you that I will fulfill every expectation, even my own. But I do pledge my commitment, unchanged and unwavering, to the core values that for 2 centuries have made this Commonwealth a force for economic justice, for progress, and compassion. In short, I will continue to fight the good fight. I will continue to see issues in the way I have always sought to see them, not as numbers and words, but as individuals and families with worries and dreams. The firefighters in Lowell, the elderly citizens at the senior center in Agawam, the nurses at the community health center in Roxbury, the students at the University of Massachusetts working to make it through college, women and men from the Berkshires to Boston to the Cape who earn a living, trying to save a little money, hope to buy a home, and build a future for their children. 25 years ago, when this Institute of Politics began, the wish that many of us had was that it would help raise the quality and renew the purposes of the public arena. We need that today more than ever. We must resist disillusionment, the tendency of politics to be cautious and cynical. We must not turn aside from tough and essential challenges. I remember the words of one of the founders of this institute who visited it and cherished it when it was just a small frame house on Mount Auburn Street. As Jacqueline Kennedy said, John Kennedy believed so strongly that one's aim should not just be the most comfortable life possible, but that we should all do something to right the wrongs we see. Many years later, that is still my belief. It is the belief that helped bring this Institute of Politics into being, and it is the belief that can sustain the efforts we each must make now and in the years ahead to make our country better. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Another person who divides much of his time between this place and Washington, D.C., and whose commitment to the Institute is also large, is the chairman of the Democratic Party, Ron Brown, whose other chairmanship, we hope slightly less stressful, is that of the IOP's Senior Advisory Committee. Ron is a former fellow and a continuing source of advice, wisdom, and political contacts. Please help me greet, for some welcoming remarks, a great and valued friend of the Institute, Ron Brown.
I only have one mission this evening, and that is to prove to all of you that the Institute of Politics does not have a fool for a chairman. There's no way I'm going to follow Ted Kennedy with a speech tonight. Now, you would think that the chairman of the Institute of Politics would have enough power so that he could have arranged the agenda so I could have been first and he could have been second. But since I do have the privilege of being with you for an hour and a half tomorrow in a debate against my Republican counterpart, I'll use that opportunity to prevail upon you with hopefully more words that will be convincing. Let me just say a word about my friend Ted Kennedy. I have never known an individual who is more caring and more committed and more courageous. Never known one who is willing, against the odds, to stand up for what is right in America, for human decency and social justice, to be in the vanguard, on the very cutting edge of the battle for constructive change in America. No one who has always been there when we need him. A person who I am proud to call my friend. And it's important that the words that you heard from him today took place here, because this is a very special place, not only at Harvard, but in America. A place with a very special role. And the fact that so many of us have come back who feel a part of the Institute of Politics. I know in talking to Charlie Royer earlier, he told me how overwhelming the response has been. Fellows that go back to the very beginning, members of the student advisory committees that go back to the very beginning, 3 former directors of the Institute here with us, all feeling a part of a very special family, and all understanding how important our mission is. I would submit to you that the mission is more important today than it was 25 years ago. And it's more important today because of the very real frustration that so many of us feel about the state of American politics, about the kind of cynicism that pervades our land, about the fact that too many people are dropping out of the process, dropping out in many ways, but the way that was most distressing in 1988 was even dropping out of participation in the process. Fewer than half of all the eligible voters in America even bothering to vote for the most important office in the world, the presidency of the United States. But we cannot allow ourselves to be strangled by that cynicism. We have to stand up to it. And that's why I'm so proud to be a part of the Institute of Politics. Because that's what we're about, is connecting the academic world to the world of real politics. To telling young people that there's nothing more important in America today than elective politics, than participating. To not be strangled by this notion that somehow we can continue to beat up on, to destroy our institutions, and have anything left of our nation. And that's what's happening in America. Politicians, elected officials, government itself being derided every day as if it is the cause of America's problems. Those of us committed to this institute and its goals accept a different kind of notion about government and about politics. We believe that effective, efficient government working with the private sector and working more closely with the people of America can really make a difference. We believe that we as a people can really control our own destiny. But we've got to stop doing what we're doing to ourselves. We've got to start believing in ourselves again and understanding that we can really have an impact on what happens in America and around the world. And that's why we're so fortunate to have leaders like Ted Kennedy, who will stand up and fight the good fight, who will not just hold their political finger to the wind to see which way it is blowing, but will respond from their heart and their gut and their souls about the issues that the American people care about. So I welcome you to this 25th anniversary celebration. I look forward to being with you over the next day and a half. But more importantly, I look forward to what we can do together to get America back on track, to keep our eye on the prize, to understand how important it is to make our nation all that it can be. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ron. Now, before class is dismissed, I want to just tell you a word or two about our program and about tonight. Our invited guests will reconvene here in the forum at 7 for a more than slightly expanded IOP supper at 7:30. I hesitate to ask you to leave an event like this, but I'm going to, and tell you that if you dawdle, then you won't have any place to sit tonight, because we need to set up the forum for dinner with some 500 of our intimate friends. John Kennedy Jr., founding director Dick Neustadt, and featured speaker Ted Sorensen are our program tonight, followed by a dance next door at Winthrop House with music from the far-off 1960s. Tomorrow we start with what I think are three outstanding panel discussions, a speech by Secretary of Education and former Fellow of the Institute, Lamar Alexander, and then a good old-fashioned political debate, as Ron mentioned, between the chairs of the parties, Ron Brown and Clayton Yiter. And then, if that weren't enough, Princeton is here tomorrow to play football against Harvard, and that's just across the river, and that should be no problem at all. It's going to be an excellent day tomorrow, both in terms of the weather and the wind, and we'll have plenty of both. Usually a faster crowd than me. I want to thank you all for joining us. Mostly I want to thank Senator Kennedy for helping to make this 25th anniversary a memorable moment for all of us who love the Institute of Politics and everything it stands for. Thank you for coming.